security grabbed
Let me
Daniel
go!
by both arms before
didn't
he
do
even
anything
understood
wrong.
what was happening.
I just need
"Let
to
go
find
of
her.
me," Daniel shouted,
Please, listen to
twisting
me.
against the grip of two men twice his size. "I was returning it. I found it on the floor. I wasn't stealing anything." "Sure you weren't," one of the guards sneered, wrenching his arm higher. "Nobody just finds a card like that and walks toward the owner." You were about to run. A small crowd had gathered outside the glass doors of the Sterling Tower lobby, phones already rising to film. Daniel's chest heaved. His daughter's face flashed in his mind. Lily, small and pale in a hospital bed 3 miles away. And for one terrifying second, he thought this was how it would end. Him in handcuffs, her alone. "Stop," the voice cut through the noise like a blade. Every guard in the lobby straightened. Victoria Sterling stepped out of the elevator in a charcoal coat, her heels clicking against marble in a rhythm that somehow silenced the entire room. She was 51, silver threading through dark hair she never bothered to dye, and she had the kind of stillness that made people nervous before she said a single word. "Release him," she said. "Ma'am, he had your card." "I said release him." Her tone didn't rise. It didn't need to. The guards let go. Daniel stumbled back, rubbing his arm, staring at the woman whose face he recognized from magazine covers and news segments. The woman worth $11 billion. The woman his co-workers joked about like she was a myth, not a person who might actually be standing 3 feet in front of him. "You found my card," Victoria said. "It wasn't a question. I did." Daniel held it out, hand trembling slightly. "It fell out of your bag by the revolving door. I was bringing it to the front desk." Victoria studied him. Not his clothes, though they were worn thin at the collar. Not his shoes, though the sole was peeling at the toe. She studied his eyes, and something in them made her go quiet for a long moment. "What's your name?" "Daniel. Daniel Reyes." "Mr. Reyes." Victoria reached out, not to take the card back, but to close his fingers around it. "Keep it." Daniel blinked. "Excuse me?" "Keep the card. For 24 hours. Buy whatever you need, whatever you want. Tomorrow at noon, you'll return it to this lobby, and I'll ask you exactly one question." Murmurs rippled through the gathered crowd. One of Victoria's executives, a tall man named Preston, stepped forward with his jaw tight. "Miss Sterling, with respect, this is my decision, Preston." Victoria didn't look at him. Her eyes stayed on Daniel. "Do you accept, Mr. Reyes?" Daniel looked down at the black card in his palm. He thought of Lily's oxygen monitor beeping steadily in a room he could barely afford another night in. He thought of the eviction notice folded in his jacket pocket. He thought of every reason this had to be a trap, a stunt, a trick that would end with him arrested on camera for a crime he never committed. And then he thought of his wife, gone 18 months now, and the promise he'd made at her graveside that he would never let their daughter go without, not while there was breath in his body. "I accept," he said quietly, "but I want to know why." Victoria almost smiled. "Tomorrow, Mr. Reyes. Noon. I won't judge you by how much you spend." She turned toward the elevator, then paused, glancing back over her shoulder. "I'll judge you by why. If you're feeling the tension already, that's exactly where this story is going to take you. So before we go further, hit that subscribe button and drop a comment telling us where you're watching from. This is only the beginning." Daniel walked out of Sterling Tower with a piece of plastic in his pocket that could erase every problem he had, and he had never in his life felt more afraid. His apartment was 2 rooms above a laundromat, the radiator clanking through the night, a single photo of his late wife Maria taped to the refrigerator because he couldn't afford a frame. Lily's room sat empty, her bed made, waiting for the day the hospital would let her come home. Daniel sat at the kitchen table until 2 a.m., turning the card over in his fingers, hearing Maria's voice in his head, the way he always did when the silence got too loud. "You always do the right thing, even when it costs you everything," she used to tell him. "That's not weakness, Daniel. That's the only kind of strength that matters." He thought about the rent, 3 months overdue, the landlord's final notice, folded so many times the creases had gone soft. He thought about the truck, One missed payment from repossession, the only way he got to the hospital and back at 6 in the morning before his shift, and again at midnight after it ended. He thought about the machine that helped Lily's heart do what it couldn't do on its own. Its steady beeping, the only thing that let him sleep some nights. He thought about the specialist who wouldn't even schedule a consultation until the last invoice was paid, and the receptionist who'd said, not unkindly, "I know it's hard, but the doctor has a policy." He remembered the night Maria told him she was sick, sitting across from him at this same kitchen table, her hand cold over his. "Promise me something," she'd said. "Promise me you won't let this turn you bitter. Whatever happens to me, you keep being exactly who you are, for her." "I promise," he'd told her, though he hadn't understood yet how hard that promise would be to keep. He could take it all. Nobody would know. He could disappear into a life of comfort with his daughter and never look back. Instead, at 7 the next morning, Daniel walked into a pharmacy and paid off Lily's entire prescription balance. 4 months of medication the family had been rationing to make last twice as long as it should. He scheduled the cardiac specialist consultation the hospital kept postponing. He paid it all in full, watching the pharmacist's eyes widen at the total on the register. "Sir, are you sure this is—" "I'm sure," Daniel said. "She's my daughter." What he didn't know was that 2 men in an unmarked sedan had been parked across the street since 6:45 a.m. Cameras trained on the pharmacy door. Victoria Sterling didn't hand out 24 hours and a black card without watching exactly what happened next. "He's at a pharmacy," the investigator murmured into his phone. "Prescription refill. Large one. Doesn't look recreational. Looks medical." In her office, 40 floors above the city, Victoria set down her coffee and said nothing. She had expected excuses. She had expected greed, dressed up as need. She had not expected this. By 9 that morning, Daniel had wandered 2 blocks from the pharmacy and stopped outside St. Bridget's Hospital when he heard a woman sobbing near the emergency entrance. A boy, maybe 8 years old, lay on a gurney being wheeled in fast, his mother running alongside, her voice cracking. "Please, he needs surgery now. I don't have insurance. I don't have anything. Please don't turn him away." Daniel's stomach dropped. He knew that voice. He had used that exact voice himself, 18 months ago, standing over Maria's hospital bed, while doctors debated what they could and couldn't do without payment first. "Ma'am," Daniel said gently, stepping up beside her. "How much do you need?" The woman turned, startled. Mascara streaked down her face. "I don't. This isn't your problem, sir. Please. I have to go with my son." "It's not a question of whose problem it is," Daniel said. "It's a question of whether he gets the surgery. Let me help." She stared at him like he'd spoken a foreign language. "Why would you do that? You don't even know us." Daniel thought of Maria's hand going cold in his, while a billing clerk hovered in the doorway, asking about a deductible. "Because somebody should have asked me that same question 18 months ago," he said quietly. "Nobody did. I'm not going to make the same mistake twice." He didn't think. He walked straight to the admissions desk. "Whatever that family owes," he said, "put it on this card. All of it. Surgery, everything." The clerk stared at him. "Sir, that could be tens of thousands of dollars." "Then it's tens of thousands of dollars," Daniel said. "Do it before he goes back." He left before the mother ever learned his name. Later that morning, Daniel stopped at a car dealership 2 blocks from the hospital, his truck making a grinding noise that told him it wouldn't survive many more trips across town. A salesman spotted the black card the moment Daniel pulled it from his jacket and practically sprinted toward him. "Sir, let me show you our showroom floor," the salesman said, already gesturing toward a gleaming row of sports cars under the lights. "With that card, you could drive out of here in anything on this lot. Anything." Daniel glanced at the sports cars, then past them, to a modest used sedan parked near the back, with a reasonable price tag taped to the windshield. "That one," Daniel said. "The one in the back." The salesman blinked. "Sir, that's a base model, 3 years old. You have access to—" I know what I have access to, Daniel said. I need something reliable that gets my daughter to her medical appointments without breaking down on the highway. That's all I need it for. You're leaving a lot on the table. I'm not trying to fill a table, Daniel said. I'm trying to get her to her appointments alive and on time. The investigator's voice, this time, had an edge of disbelief in it. Miss Sterling? He just paid a stranger's hospital bill. Full surgery cost. He didn't even wait to be thanked. Victoria stood at her window, watching the traffic crawl 14 floors below, and for the first time in longer than she could remember, her eyes were wet. Because 11 years ago, it had been her in that exact hallway. Her husband dying, her bank account empty, a stranger she never got to properly thank, quietly clearing the bill before vanishing into the crowd. She had spent a decade trying to find him. She had built this entire test, the card, the 24 hours, the quiet surveillance, hoping that somewhere in this city, there was still someone who gave without needing to be seen. She hadn't expected to find him on her very first attempt. Keep watching, she told the investigator, her voice tighter than she intended. Tell me everything. Preston knocked and entered without waiting for an answer, a habit she'd never bothered correcting. You've seen the footage from the hospital? I've seen it. Victoria, I need you to consider the exposure here. A man on the street corner already tried to approach him. My source says it was Marcus Doyle. You know that name. Fraud, extortion, 2 open investigations he slipped out of. If Doyle is circling this, others will too. You handed a stranger unrestricted access to your accounts in front of a lobby full of cameras. Turn Doyle down flat, Victoria said. Didn't hesitate. This time, Preston said, what about the next offer? What happens when someone smarter than Doyle finds him? Victoria set down the folder in her hands. Do you know why I started this experiment, Preston? You've never told me. Then trust that I have my reasons, and let me finish it. Preston studied her for a long moment, the way he had for 11 years, ever since he'd watched her rebuild a company out of grief, instead of letting it swallow her. Whatever he saw in her face made him nod once, and let the door close quietly behind him, without another word. By early afternoon, Daniel had bought groceries for 3 families he recognized from the hospital waiting room. Parents who hadn't eaten a full meal in days, while camped beside their children's beds. He paid off the overdue electric bill for Mrs. Alvarez, the elderly widow who lived below him, and who once left soup on his doorstep the week Maria died, without ever saying a word about it. When he knocked on her door to tell her it was handled, she pressed both hands to her chest. Daniel, no, you can't. You barely have enough for yourself. You brought me soup when you didn't know if I could pay you back for the ingredients, Daniel said. Let me do this, please. Mrs. Alvarez's eyes filled. Your Maria raised a good man, she said. She would be so proud of you right now. Daniel had to look away for a moment before he could answer. I hope so. From there, he drove across town to a homeless shelter he'd once slept a single night in himself, back when the bills after Maria's death had briefly outpaced everything he had. The roof had been leaking for 2 winters, a bucket permanently stationed under the ceiling in the main hall. He arranged for a repair crew on the spot, paid in full, and asked the director not to mention his name to anyone. Most people who come through that door want a plaque with their name on it, the director said, studying him. You want the opposite. I don't need anyone to know, Daniel said. I just need it fixed before winter. He walked into Lily's elementary school next and cleared the lunch debt for every child in the building. 41 names on a printed list the front office kept taped inside a drawer, embarrassed to even display it. Anonymous, he told the office administrator. Please, don't tell anyone it was me. Online, a video of the hospital bill payment, filmed by a bystander who recognized the black card's distinctive gold trim, had already begun to spread. Anonymous Angel started trending by early afternoon. No name attached, just grainy footage of a tired-looking man in a worn jacket quietly saving a stranger's son. Victoria watched the footage on her phone, with Preston standing rigid beside her desk. This is exactly the kind of PR nightmare I warned you about, Preston said. If the press connects this card to you before we control the narrative. I don't care about the narrative, Preston. You should. There are people who would kill for the kind of access you just handed a stranger. What if this isn't who he seems to be? What if someone gets to him first? Victoria's jaw tightened, because Preston, infuriatingly, wasn't wrong to worry. Even if he was wrong about Daniel, he was right to worry about someone else entirely. Marcus Doyle had been watching the same viral footage from a very different kind of office, a cramped one, above a pawn shop he used as a front for schemes that rarely stayed on the right side of the law. He recognized the card the second he saw the gold trim. Everyone in his circles knew what a sterling black card meant. Unlimited, untraceable for at least 24 hours, if you knew how to move fast enough. He found Daniel outside the grocery store, just past 3 in the afternoon. Daniel Reyes, Marcus said, falling into step beside him, with a smile too wide to be friendly. You don't know me, but I know exactly what you're holding, and I know exactly how much trouble you could avoid if you let me help you use it. Daniel stopped walking. Who are you? Someone who can turn that card into real money for you. Cash, wired out before anyone traces it, split 50-50. Your daughter needs surgery, doesn't she? Needs a specialist? I can make sure you never worry about a medical bill again for the rest of her life. For one heartbeat, Daniel's resolve wavered. The number Marcus mentioned wasn't small. It was the kind of number that solved everything, permanently. No more rationing medication. No more praying the truck started in the morning. Then he thought of the mother in the hospital hallway, of Mrs. Alvarez's tired, grateful eyes, of Maria's voice telling him that the right thing was the only kind of strength that mattered. No, Daniel said. Marcus's smile thinned. You're really going to walk away from millions because of some misplaced sense of honor? It's not misplaced, Daniel said. Let me say it plainer then. Marcus stepped closer, lowering his voice. Nobody's watching you, Daniel. Nobody's going to know where the money went. 24 hours from now, that card goes back in Victoria Sterling's purse, and you're back to scraping together bus fare. This is the only door that's ever going to open for you. Walk through it. For a moment, Daniel actually pictured it. A hospital room with no billing clerk in the doorway, ever again. Then he pictured the boy on the gurney, and the woman who had asked why a stranger would help. He pictured Maria's voice, steady even now, 18 months after he'd stopped being able to hear it out loud. You think this door is the only one that matters? Daniel said slowly. Because you've never seen what it looks like when it opens for somebody else instead of you. I have. Today. Twice. I'm not closing it to make room for myself. That's a beautiful speech for a man who can't pay his rent. Maybe, Daniel said, but I'll still be able to look my daughter in the eye tonight. Can you say the same about whoever you answer to? Marcus's jaw tightened. You're making a mistake. It's not for sale, Daniel said again. Get away from me. He walked off without looking back, hands shaking. Not from fear this time, but from how close he'd let the offer get before he'd found his footing again. This is the part of the story where everything could have gone a completely different direction. And it almost did. If you want to see exactly how this ends, make sure you like this video right now so it reaches more people who need to hear it. And stay with us, because the biggest twist is still coming. By 6 that evening, the investigators' reports had piled up on Victoria's desk in a stack that told a story more powerful than any pitch her marketing team could have written. Every transaction Daniel made benefited someone other than himself. Medicine, surgery, groceries, utility bills, school debts. He had refused an offer of millions from a stranger without a second's hesitation once he understood what was being asked of him. He had spent, in total, less than 4% of what the card could have withdrawn in a single afternoon. Preston stood at her side reading the same numbers, his earlier objections dying somewhere in his throat. I don't understand it, he admitted quietly. Anyone else would have run. He's not anyone else, Victoria said. At 11:47 p.m., With less than an hour left on the clock, Daniel sat in his truck outside St. Bridget's, having just visited Lily for evening rounds. She was sleeping when he arrived, an oxygen tube taped gently beneath her nose, her small chest rising and falling in a rhythm the machines helped along. He sat beside her bed for 20 minutes without saying anything, just holding her hand, the black card still folded in his jacket pocket, untouched by even a hint of the millions he could have kept for himself. "I did it for you," he whispered to his sleeping daughter. "I hope one day you understand why." At exactly 11:58, Daniel walked back through the doors of Sterling Tower. The same lobby, the same marble floor, only this time, no security dragged him by the arms. A small crowd had gathered, reporters who had caught wind of the anonymous angel story, executives curious about how their CEO's strange experiment would end. Preston, standing tense near the elevator bank. Victoria stepped forward at exactly noon. "Mr. Reyes," she held out her hand for the card. Daniel placed it in her palm. "It's all there. I kept a record of everything, in case you needed proof." He handed her a folded piece of notebook paper, every transaction written in careful handwriting. Pharmacy, hospital, groceries, utilities, school. Victoria didn't even open it. She already knew. "You had access to more money in 24 hours than most people see in a lifetime," she said, her voice carrying across the silent lobby. "And you left 96% of it untouched. Why?" The room held its breath. Cameras leaned in, Preston's arms uncrossed for the first time all day. Daniel was quiet for a moment, searching for the words he'd been turning over since the hospital hallway that morning. "Because kindness isn't earned by stealing someone else's blessing," he said. "You gave me that card to see what kind of man I was, not how much I could take. If I'd spent it all on myself, I wouldn't have deserved a single dollar of it. My daughter is sick, Miss Sterling. I need help more than almost anyone in this city. But there were people today who needed it more than I did, in that exact moment, and I couldn't look away from that, not even for her." Silence swallowed the lobby whole. A reporter lowered her phone without realizing it. Preston, a man who hadn't shown visible emotion in a boardroom in over a decade, pressed a hand briefly to his mouth. Victoria's composure, the same composure that had carried her through 11 years of hidden grief, finally broke. Tears slid down her face in front of cameras, executives, strangers, and she didn't move to hide them. 11 years ago, she said, her voice unsteady for the first time anyone in that room had ever heard. "My husband was dying in a hospital, just like the one you walked into yesterday. I had no money left. A stranger paid the bill before I even knew his name, and disappeared before I could thank him. I built this test hoping I would find someone like that man again. I didn't expect to find him on my first try." She stepped closer to Daniel, her voice dropping so only he could hear it, though the microphones nearby caught every word. "You didn't just pass a test, Mr. Reyes. You reminded me why I started giving in the first place." "I don't feel like I did anything special," Daniel said, his own voice unsteady now. "I just didn't want to be the kind of man who could look away." "That's the part everyone forgets," Victoria said. "It's not special because it's rare, in the way talent is rare. It's special because it's a choice, every single time. And most people talk themselves out of it before they ever make it." Preston, standing near the elevator bank, finally spoke, his voice rougher than the boardroom version anyone in that lobby had ever heard. 11 years I've worked for this woman," he said, "and I have never once seen her cry in front of a camera. Whatever you did today, Mr. Reyes, it mattered. If this moment just gave you chills, you're not alone. And there's still more waiting for you before this story ends." Comment below with one word describing how this scene made you feel, and don't forget to subscribe to Billionaire Story Vault, because stories like this one deserve to be seen by more people who need a reason to believe in kindness again. What happened next unfolded faster than Daniel could process. Victoria personally called Lily's cardiac specialist and arranged for the life-saving surgery to happen within the week, covering every cost herself, refusing to let it wait another day on any hospital's schedule. She had her legal team draw up papers for a modest but comfortable home, 2 miles from St. Bridget's, close enough that Daniel would never again spend an hour on a bus or a failing truck to reach his daughter's bedside. She offered him something else, too. Not charity, but a position within her foundation, overseeing exactly the kind of quiet, unglamorous giving he had proven himself capable of without anyone asking him to. "I've had executives pitch me giving strategies for 15 years, Victoria told him. "None of them ever understood it the way you understood it in one afternoon, without any training, without a single meeting. I don't want a strategy anymore. I want someone who feels it the way you do." "I've never run anything bigger than a night shift cleaning crew," Daniel admitted. "Then you'll learn the parts you don't know," Victoria said. "The part you already know is the part that can't be taught." "I don't want an employee who works for a paycheck," Victoria told him, sitting across from him in her office a week later. "I want someone who understands what the money is actually for." "You already know. Most people who work for me have to be taught." Daniel accepted, though it took him a long moment to find his voice. "Maria would have loved this," he finally said. "My wife. She always said the right thing was the only kind of strength that mattered. I just wish she could see Lily get better." Victoria reached into a folder on her desk and slid a single sheet of paper across to him. "She'll see it, in a way. I'd like to start a scholarship in her name for nursing students who can't afford tuition. Maria Reyes Memorial Fund, if that's something you'd want." Daniel couldn't speak for a long moment. He simply nodded, his eyes wet. His hand pressed briefly over his mouth the way Preston's had in that lobby days earlier. Marcus Doyle, the man who had tried to lure Daniel into fraud, was quietly identified through the pharmacy's security footage and Victoria's own investigators. 2 weeks later, local police arrested him on unrelated charges of financial fraud that had been building against him for over a year. The attention drawn to Daniel's story had simply accelerated what was already coming. 3 months later, Lily ran barefoot through the backyard of a small yellow house, her laughter carrying through open windows, color back in her cheeks that hadn't been there in over a year. The surgery had gone exactly the way the specialist promised it would. Her heart, for the first time since she was a toddler, worked the way a child's heart was supposed to. "Daddy, watch," she called out, chasing a butterfly across the grass with both arms outstretched. And Daniel laughed, despite the lump rising in his throat. He stood on the back porch watching her, a mug of coffee warming his hands, and for the first time since Maria's funeral, he let himself cry without trying to stop it. Not from grief this time, but from something that finally felt like relief. Victoria visited that afternoon, standing quietly beside him as they watched Lily chase a butterfly across the grass. "Money can reveal character," Victoria said softly, almost to herself. "But it takes trust to actually change a life." Daniel wiped his eyes and nodded, watching his daughter run free in a yard he never could have afforded a year ago. In a life he never could have imagined, the morning security dragged him across that marble lobby floor. "She's going to grow up never knowing how close we came to losing everything," he said. "No," Victoria agreed. "She's going to grow up knowing her father gave everything away and somehow ended up with more than he started with." If this story moved you even half as much as it moved everyone in that room, let us know in the comments what you would have done with the card. And if you believe stories like this deserve to be told, hit subscribe and share this with someone who needs a reminder that kindness still changes lives. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next story.